Chapter 28. Need to define God and self. Carisor. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Artless remark, O you? Well, I suppose it's a gift. To stir hell to its most abysmal horror with one small remark slipped in at the end. You, scorpion. Higher self? God within us? Dear lady, you could never have picked 5 words from Iroquois or Bantai or Basuto or the jargon of Master Francis Villain or Pictish, which severely and together convey less to my mind. No, no, not less. I meant more. So much more that it amounts to nothing at all. Spencer, Montmorency, Bourbon, Hohenstaufen sounds very exclusive and aristocratic, and even posh or ritzy. But if you bestow these names upon every male child, the effect tends to diminish. Give me the old spade. I gotta go digging again. 1. Higher. Here we fall straight into the arms of Freud. Why higher? Because in a scrap, it is easier to strangle him if you are on top. When very young children watch their parents and actu coitus, a circumstance exceedingly usual almost anywhere outside England, and even here where house room is restricted, the infant supposes that his mother, upon whom he depends entirely for nourishment, is being attacked by the intrusive stranger whom they want him to address as dad. From this seed springs an over under complex, giving rise later on, in certain cases, to whole legions of neurosis. Now then, make it a little clearer, please, just what you mean by higher. Skeet seems to connect it with hills, swellings, boils, the maternal breast. Is that reason enough for us to connect it with the idea of advantage? Or superiority merely translates it into Latin, worth or no? It's really too difficult. Of course, sometimes it has a bad meaning, as of temperature and fever, but nearly always it implies a condition preferable to low. Applied to the self, it becomes a sort of trade name. Nobody tells me if he means Ku or Ba or Cobbs or Ut of the Upanishads or Agenes of the Neoplatonists or Adone of Bulwer Lytton. Or here we are with all those thrice accursed alternatives. There is not, cannot be, any specific meaning unless we start with a sound skeleton of ontogenic theory, a well mapped hierarchy of the cosmos, and define the term anew. Then why use it? To do so can only cause confusion, unless the context helps us to clarify the image. And that is surely rather a defeatist attitude, isn't it? When I first set myself to put a name to my mission, the contemplation carried me halfway across southwest China. I considered these alternatives. I thought to cut the Gordian knot and call it by a Brimlin's title, the Holy Guardian Angel, because, I mused, that will be as intelligible to the villagers of Pupang as to the most learned pundits. Moreover, the implied theory was so crude that no one need to be bound by it. 2. Within. If you don't mind, we'll tackle this now, while higher is fresh in our minds, for it is also a preposition. First, you want to go up, then you want to go in. Why? As higher gave the idea of aggression, of conquest, within usually implies safety. Always we get back to that stage of history when the social unit, based on the family, was little less than condition number one of survival. The house, the castle, the fortified camp, the city wall, the gens, the clan, the tribe, the patrie. To be outside means danger from cold, hunger and thirst, raiding parties, highway robbers, bears, wolves, and tigers. To go out was to take a risk, and your labor and courage being assets to your kinsmen, you were also a bad man. In fact, a bounder or outsider. Debauch is simply to go out of doors. St. John says, without our dogs and sorcerers and whoremongers and adulterers and idolaters and so on and so on. We of Thelema challenge all of this briskly. Quote, the word of sin is restriction, end quote. Al 1, verse 41. Our formula, roughly speaking, is to go out and grab what we want. We do this so thoroughly that we grow hereby, extending our conception of I by including each new accretion instead of remaining a closely delineated self, proud of possessing other things, as do the Black brothers. We are wholehearted extroverts. The penalty of restricting oneself is anything from neurosis to downright lunacy, in particular, melancholia. You ask whether these remarks do not conflict with my repeated definition of initiation as the way in. Not at all. The inmost is identical with the all. As you travel inward, you become able to perceive all the layers which surround the self from within, thus enlarging the scope of your vision of the universe. It is like moving from a skirmishing patrol to GHQ, and the object of so doing is obviously to exercise constantly increasing control over the whole army. Every step in rank enables you both to see more and to do more, but one's attention is inevitably directed outward. When the entire system of the universe is conterminous with your comprehension, inward and outward become identical. But it won't do it all to seek anything within but a point of view, for the simple reason that there is nothing else there. It is just like all those symbols in the book of Thoth. As soon as you get to the end of anything, you suddenly find it is the beginning. To formulate the idea of self at all, you must posit limitations. Anything that is distinguishable is a mere temporary and arbitrary selection of the finite from the infinite. Whatever you choose to think of, it changes, it grows, it disappears. You have got to train your mind to canter through those leafy avenues of thought upon the good green turf of indifference, when you can do it without conscious effort, so that up, down, in, out, far, near, black, white, and so on for everything appears quite automatically. You are already as near an initiate as makes no matter. 3. Self. For a full discussion of this, see letter 42. 4. God. This is really too bad of you. Of all the hopelessly mangled words in the language, you settle with unerring sadism on the most brutally butchered. Skeet hardly helps us at all, except by warning us that good has nothing whatever to do with it. Deo comes from deus, with all its soul Jupiter references, and dios, which Plato thought meant a runner, hence sun, moon, planets. The best I can do for you, honest Injun, is the Russian word for God, bog, connected probably through the Lithuanian with the Welsh bwig, a specter or hobgoblin. Bug, too. Not very inspiring, is it, to replace the old hundredth by hush, 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 here comes the boogeyman? Or is it? Enough of this fooling. Out, trusty rapier, and home to the stone heart of the audacious woman that wrote God within us. I know you thought you knew more or less what you meant when you wrote it, but surely that was a mere slip. An instant's thought would have warned you that the word wouldn't stand even the most superficial analysis. You meant something which seems to me the most perfect symbol of all that I love, worship, admire, all that classes a verb. But nobody else will have the same set of qualities in his private museum. You have, as everyone has always done, made another God in your own image. Then the Vedantas define God as having neither quality nor quantity. And some yogis have a practice of setting up images to knock them down at once with, not that, not that. And the Buddhists won't admit God at all and anything at all like the sense in which you use the word. What's worse, whatever you may mean by God conveys no idea to me. I can only guess by the light of my exceedingly small knowledge of you and your general habits of thought and action. Then what sense was there in chucking it at my head? Half a brick would have served you better. You think you can explain to me, viva voice, perhaps? Don't you dare try. Whatever you said, I should prove to be nonsense, philosophically and in a dozen other ways. And the county council ambulance would bundle you off and your battered and bewildered debris to the bug house, as is so etymologically indicated. Do see it simply. The word must in any event connote ideas of deshema, not of rosh. But you use the word all the time. Yes, I do. And rely on the context to crystallize this most fluid or gaseous of expressions. Us? Why us? Is this a reference to the old school tie or that finishing school in Brussels and the ticket to the royal enclosure at Ascot? I do not suppose for a moment that you meant it that way, but it's there. And so, anecdote for Lao Tzu. The old one was surrounded as usual by a galaxy of adoring disciples, and they were trying to get him to show them where the Tao was to be found. It was in the sun and moon, he admitted. It was in the Son of Heaven and in the superior man. It was in the blossoms of springtide and in the chilling winds that swept over from Siberia and in the wild geese that it bore southward when their instinct bade them. In short, the catalog began to look as if it were going to extend indefinitely. And an impatient disciple, pointing to certain traces left by a mule in its recent passage, asked, "And is that the Tao also?" The master nodded and echoed, "Also in that." Then what becomes of this privileged us? We are obliged to extend it to include everything. Then, as we have just seen, God also is unfettered by definitions. Net result, God within us means precisely nothing at all. And so it does by Brahman. Quote, bind nothing. Let there be no difference made among you between any one thing and any other thing, for thereby there cometh hurt. But whoso availeth in this, let him be the chief of all. End quote. Al 1, verses 22 through 23. I implore you not to point out that, this being the case, words like hurt and chief cannot possibly mean anything. The fact is that if we are going to get on peaceably in the club, we have to know when to take any expression in a Pickwickian sense. In the Rosh, all the laws of logic apply. They don't in Nishima. The real meaning of the passage is simple enough if you understand that it refers to a specific result of initiation. You have to be able to reckon up the universe as a whole and in every part, and to get rid of all its false or partial realities by discarding everything but the one reality which is the sole truth in and of illusion. There is one set of equations which expresses the relation of the perceiver and the perceived, adjusted in accordance with the particular limitations on both sides. Another cancels out all the finite terms and leaves us with an ultimate. X equals 0 equals 0, 0. See, I know I'm a disheartening kind of bloke, and it does seem so unfriendly to jump down a fellow's throat every minute or so when she tries to put it ever so nicely. And it is so easy, isn't it, to play the game of sanctimonious grandiloquence And surely what was said was perfectly harmless. No, 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 not harmless at all. My whole object is to train you to silence every kind of hypothetical speculation and formulate both resonant and satisfying. I want you to abhor them, abominate them, despise them, detest them, eschew them, hate them, loathe them, and da capo, and to get on with your practice. Then, when you get the results, you can try, albeit uselessly, to fit your own words to the facts if you should wish to communicate, for any good reason, your experiences to other people. Then, despairing of your impotence, how glad you will be that you have been trained not to let anyone fob you off with phrases. Love is the law, love under will, fraternally yours.